Hi guys, so I just finished recording this video that's about to play, and I just want to let you know before it starts that there should be a content warning for this. It's going to involve child abuse and things like that, so if that's something that you don't think you can deal with, please skip out of this video, okay? And I won't say enjoy the video because it's my life. I hope you don't enjoy it, but I hope you find it interesting, or if you can relate to me, it'd be nice to have someone to talk to. So see you in the next bit. Hi guys, so I am gonna try and talk about my mum today. I might need to smoke during this. I don't know where to start, if I'm honest. My mum, she's a Jehovah's Witness. She had me last, so I am her fourth child, and she was 37 when she had me, so she was quite an older mum. I've got one of Sam's hairs on me. And she gave birth to me when she was already a Jehovah's Witness. So my brothers, I believe, well, I know my oldest brother, he wasn't born in it, and my other two, from what she told me when I was a kid, they were brought into it young. They weren't born in it. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only one who was like born into being a Jehovah's Witness. And so growing up, she's strict, but she was still quite loving. And she taught me a lot of good things, what I believe are correct ways to parent. She just doesn't follow them herself. So like the main thing was that she'd always say like no one ever should come between you and your kids. Your kids should always be number one. But at the same time, because we're Jehovah's Witnesses, you are taught that God comes first, or the religion comes first. It's not a religion, it's a cult. But so growing up, I fully believed that my mum loved me the most, along with my brothers. Like, we mattered to her more than anything. The problem was, everything changed when I was about 12. My brothers had left home, and they left home within like a year of each other. So it suddenly became just me and her. And at that time, she started being a pretty bad Jehovah's Witness, I must say. She was watching a lot of stuff on TV that she wasn't allowed to watch. So I remember we watched The Sixth Sense together. We used to watch Sex in the City. Those things are like super frowned on. Like, well, not even frowned on. Like, mum could probably got disfellowshipped straight up for watching The Sixth Sense, which I always feel proud of when I watch that film or think about that film, because I straightly from the beginning, like, well, early on, I was like, he's dead, that's why the boy can see him. Mum didn't believe me, but they come true, and I was like, see, smart. But that was really fun. Like, that little bit of time where we had when it was just me and her, it was quite fun. But the whole time, she would keep mentioning how she was lonely, and that she was worried that when I leave home, she will all be on her own. And there was a man in the congregation that had shown interest in my mum. I remember her talking about it quite a lot. And she would say that he wasn't her type. Basically, my mum's a little white lady who likes black men. And this guy was not black. He was a white man. And he just wasn't her type. She just never seemed to be into him at all. So, like, the next bit, I don't know the exact ins and outs because I was a child, but I was a very nosy child, and I used to listen to a lot of doors, a lot of closed doors. And mum was speaking to our family friend, I guess, like, about this. Like, from what I could hear, it was about her wanting to speak to the elders about what she should do, about not wanting to be on her own. And from what I can gather, she had that chat with the elders, and they basically tell her what she should do and what the Bible suggests, things like that. And next thing I know, like one day, my mum just calls me down, and I'm on the stairs, and she says, "Oh, your dad's coming to visit." And I'm like, "What?" Because my dad, I never grew up with him. I never knew him. I met him maybe 2 or 3 times. And he'd give me like a little bit of money. We'd write letters fairly frequently to each other, me and my dad. But he could never spell my name right. He still doesn't know how to spell my name. I've got all these letters, and like pretty much every single one has got a different spelling of the name Rianne. He could never bother to learn it. But the reason why we moved to where we moved to in the country was because when mum got with my dad, they apparently got disfellowshipped together, and that was because they did the naughty when they weren't married. And they got married, I guess. I don't know what time frame they got married to having me, but they got married and had me. And then when they had me, social services came round to my mum and told her that my dad is a convicted child abuser, and that she can't stay with him. And if she does, they would take away my brothers and myself from her. So we ended up moving to this little town in the country when I was 7 months old. And so when I'm like 12 and I'm standing on the stairs and mum's like, "Dad's coming to visit." And I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, all my life I'd asked, like, why don't I have a dad? And I never knew. And so while I stood on the stairs that day, she told me, well, he did some really bad things to some children, like sexual things, and he wasn't allowed to live with us. And I'm like, well, how come he's coming to visit? And she's like, well, we're married and we're going to try and make a go at things again. And he's going to come stay for a few days. And I'm like, okay, well, everyone deserves a second chance. Why not? And like literally he came a few hours later. It was insane. Like, you go through all your life and you don't know this person, and suddenly they're at your house and they're your dad. And that's just pretty crazy. And he was there for like the night, and then I remember I went to school the next day and I brought home my friend. I won't say anyone's name. So I brought home my friend D from school. Yeah, I brought her home, and I wanted to show her my dad. No one ever seen my dad before. And my mum and him had got a DVD to watch, or a video rather. I think it's probably a video at that time. Or maybe she'd rented something on Sky. Like, I don't know. They were going to watch a movie. So me and Dee asked if we could watch it with her or watch it with them. And they said no. And I was like, why not? Like, it'd be nice to watch stuff together. You know, he's not here for long, and I wanted my friend to meet him. And they said no. One thing I missed out was the first night they stayed, I found this drawer in my mum's bedroom. I was snooping. Shouldn't have been snooping, but I was. And I found a drawer of condoms. And I was like, part of what Mama said about him coming is that they're going to try and get back together, and so that I could get to know him. And I'm like, well, if they're trying to get to know me and they're getting back together, why are they having like sex? Like, they ain't seen each other in like ages. Like, they shouldn't be having sex. And I was a bit pissed off. So I like cut all the condoms in half. And so when I was asking if we could watch this movie, I got really upset. And I said, how come you said you wanted to come here and get to know me and spend time with me, but all you want to do is spend time with mum, and you want to spend time with him, and you got condoms, and like, this doesn't seem like you wanted me to be part of this. So I'm stroppy, you know, I'm 12. I'm trying to figure all this out. It's really insane. And so I start arguing with my dad, and my friend Dee is in the room. Took me a long time, but I recently found her and I asked her if she remembered any of this, and she remembers it all. She said it was terrifying. But I'm arguing with him, and when I get stressed or tense, I will clench my fist. I'll often clench my fist, not because I don't want to hit anything. I'm just stressed, and I'm just trying to like hold myself together. And like, one thing I should let you know is my dad is huge. My dad is a literal giant. He's like 6'7", 6'8". He's gigantic, and he's not just tall like Jared. Like Jared's tall but like lanky. My dad is tall and not muscly, but he's just huge. He's a bulky dude. And so I'm looking up at this huge guy, and he's shouting at me, and I'm shouting back at him. And then he starts going, hit me then, hit me, because I've got my fists clenched. They're not raised or anything. They're just by my sides. And I remember him saying that over and over and over again in my face. And till the point where he's backed me up against my kitchen sink, because we're in the kitchen. And I can't go any further. Like, I've been pushed right back up into the sink. I can feel it behind me. So I just reach up and slap him, like a open-handed slap. I've always said this. I swear, before I even completely touched his face, it's like the minute I connected, like just a tiny bit on his face, he was like, poof, poof, like his whole body. He was just hitting me with his arms, and his arms would go round me, and they'd hit the other side with his fist. And he's just walloping me, like, and just did not stop. And I fell to the floor, and I started trying to like scurry away. And I got to the fireplace, and I kind of stopped there. Because again, like with the sink, there was nowhere else for me to go. And then he started lifting his foot, and like he was going to kick me. So my mum then was like, oh no, stop, don't do that, stop now, stop. And like she kind of pulled him away, and then sent him through the door to go towards the living room. And then she turned back to me as I was standing up, and she was like, you asked for that. I'll never forget her saying that. That hurt. That really hurt. Because I was hurt anyway. I was like physically hurt. And then she said, oh, you better just take. And I looked around, and I saw my friend Dee under the kitchen table. It's actually the same table we have today. The one my husband works at in the bedroom now. You might have seen it a few times in some older videos, but this big folding table, and it was set up. So she was just like hiding underneath this table. She was so scared. I completely forgot she was there. So we got up, and we walked back to her house, which was about half an hour walk. And then I came back home, and my neighbor, who was our family friend who we grew up with, she was my next door neighbor. She came and got me and told me I had to stay there that night. And as I'm older now, I just feel so upset that my mum chose to keep him in the house and not me, and she blamed me for that whole situation. I mean, I'm sure I was wrong in places. I was a stroppy kid, but like there was a lot going on, and I didn't understand what was happening. And I felt really pushed aside. And so I went to go stay at this neighbor's house, I'll call her. And she kind of like took my clothes off and had a look at me. So I told her what happened, and she could see all these bruises forming all around my ribs, and everything really hurt. I just remember my ribs hurt so bad. And then the next day, she took us to the beach, and we went to play some arcade machines. And I really love 2p machines, you know, where you put the 2p in and you wait for it to fall in the right place. And I don't ever play for coins. I don't understand why people play 2p machines for coins. I play for toys, like I do at Trip. And I won this big for the machine, you know. It couldn't fall down when I won it. I had to touch the glass, and I had to ask someone to get it out for me. And I won this big soft sheep that I called tuppence. And for some reason, for years, that was really comforting to me, getting that plush. It was just such a hard time. It was just like a comfort. But that night, we went back. I actually noticed the night before, and it happened again that night. But her son, I will call A, we always grew up together. We were best friends. He was a year younger than me. He was like a brother. And I was sleeping at the end of his bed, like on the floor. This is the night before I got tuppence. And he reached over and while I was sleeping, and he started touching me. And like, I was older than him. So, and when I was younger, I remember A used to hit me a lot, and E would say, just hit him back. So that kind of became a thing, like we were like brothers and sisters, and if one of us picked on the other one, we'd just wallop the other one back. And so he started doing this thing to me, and I didn't like it. I didn't understand it. I mean, I knew what it was he was doing. I did not want it, and I did not like it. And I whacked him, and he backed away like a slug going away from salt. And he kind of just like backed away. And I went back to sleep. And then it happened again. And I went back to sleep. And it happened again. And I went back to sleep all night. And then the night I got tuppence, exactly the same thing. This was the worst weekend of my life. That Friday, my dad beat me, and then my mum rejected me, and then I got sent to a house where I was getting abused out of the blue. I felt safe in, And after that, it went on a lot longer because my mum, after my dad went back, she chose to leave that town we were living in to move to the town I live in now because we had some family here. So she used that as an excuse to see her grandchildren. But really all she wanted to do was be closer to where the town my dad lived in. And then she just dumped me on this family member and leave me with them. She would just like leave me for weeks. Sometimes she'd send me off to go with my brothers because they worked at holiday camps. So she'd sometimes send me there. And I knew after a while, because every time she went, she would just go, like every time that happened, she would just go to see my dad. And I went to this new school for about a month and I really didn't like it. They were teaching things in a weird order. I'd already learned some of the stuff. Because by this point, I'm at the end of school. I'm at year 10, 11 by the time we move. Or year 10, yeah. And I didn't like that school. So I said, Mum, I want to move back to the other town. Can I go live with E? Because, like, these things happened like twice, but I'd known them for my entire life. Like, I spent so many nights around their house. It was just like a second home, and she was like a second mum. I didn't think it was going to happen again, And Mum said, yeah. She was so excited to get rid of me. It just meant she could just have my dad in our house, because I wasn't around, because I refused to be anywhere near him after that. His second chance with me was over. And so I went to go live with this family that I'd grown up with. Oh, and things got so much worse. We got a bunk bed by that point because I was going to be living there. And I was on the top bunk, he was on the bottom bunk. And at night times, he would crawl up and he would like pull the blankets, and that's when I would realize something was happening, and I would wake up and wallop him. Sometimes you'd hear him fall on the floor, and I'll be like, oh, that might wake up E and his dad. Maybe they'll come in. I can say what he's doing, but they never came in. But yeah, he would like literally thump onto the floor. Sometimes I'd hit him so hard off the bed. But after, I don't know, it went on for a long time every night. And eventually this is so hard to talk about because this is what I feel so ashamed about. And I know I shouldn't feel ashamed. But it's still hard because I felt, the feeling at the time, that don't really leave you. So even though you shouldn't feel shame, you still feel that feeling you had then of the shame. But after a while, I realised that if I just pretended to be asleep and not wake up and not hit him, it would be a lot easier, and I'd be able to go to school in the morning and not be tired, because he would, every time I'd hit him off the bed, he'd just wait for me to go back to sleep and then do it again until he was satisfied. So I just started laying there and let him touch me and just pretend that I wasn't awake, just go somewhere else, like. And then he would stop, and then in the morning I'd get up and I'd scrub myself so hard because I was so scared as well, because around that time we're having like sex ed at school, and they're like talking about a lot about heavy petting, and if someone touches themselves and touches you, they perhaps could get you pregnant, and all this really kind of scary stuff that I was like, I'm so scared. And that was how I was living for months and months and months. And I was taking GCSE history at school. And so I had this big old binder. It was just full of World War One, World War Two stuff, just huge folder. So somewhere amongst all that, I had a few sheets of paper that I would write, like there's basically a diary of what he would do, just to like say something. But it was just like my diary. And at the weekends, I would go back home to my mum. And one weekend I went back home, and we got a phone call from E, and I'd left my folder there, and she snooped for it. There's no way she could have stumbled upon my diary. It was so hidden. So she obviously was suspicious of something. I don't know what she thought I was doing. I know that I had snuck cigarettes in, but she'd always found them under my pillow and stuff. So I don't know why she was looking for my diary, or looking for any evidence in that folder. But she looked through it and read what was written. And she called my mum and called me a liar and said I wasn't welcome back anymore. And that was the end of that. My mum said, like, oh, I always knew that boy was weird. And that's because his dad used to do some really fucked up shit. Like, YE would be at the bottom of the stairs on the phone. He would just like stand at the top of the stairs with his willy out and shake it and like laughing. And like me and A would be there, we'd be like little kids, and we'd witness this weird stuff. Or she'd be washing up, and he'd come dry hump her while she's she's washing up and stuff, washing up the dishes. Or like he'd put his false teeth in the dog's mouth and then put them right back in his mouth. He dropped him in the toilet once and put him back in his mouth. And he told A that, like, when A asked why he doesn't have any siblings like I did, he said, oh, you do, we just ate them when they got big enough. So like that used to scare A. Like he really thought that he was going to get eaten at some point, and that went on for a long time, like where he thought he was going to get eaten by his mum and dad. Like his dad was so fucked up. I remember one time he gave E a present, and it was in this nice little box. It was really cute. And so she pulled out what was inside, and it was like tissue. And so she'd unwrap that tissue and unwrap the next tissue and more. And in the end, what was in the center of the tissue was a gigantic bogey. His dad was just really weird. I remember they one time showed us some condoms they had in their drawer called Wacky Willies. And they had like funny pictures on them of sperms with faces and stuff. And the condoms had faces and whatnot. They were just really weird like that. That wasn't what our house was like, you know. So mum never really liked that part of it. She never liked the dad in that house, but she was best friends with E, and I grew up with A because we were so close in age. I can't remember what I was saying, but anyway, mum said that she always knew he was a weird kid and he would probably grow up to do weird stuff like that. And that was pretty much all that was ever said about that situation between me and my mum. Just that I wasn't going to be going back there, and I'd have to go find another friend's family who would let me stay with him so I could finish school. But anyway, not that long after that, my uncle died, and we had to go to his funeral, which was in the same town. And at the wake, his family was there, and I hadn't seen them for a long time. I just avoided A like the plague, didn't want to go anywhere near him. But then E and K, his dad, called me over to their car. They got a car by this point, and they sat me in their car, and they had the door open, and I can't remember which one. I think K was in the car, and I think E was on the outside of the car, and they were talking to me about what they'd found in my diary and saying how that it wasn't true and that I'm not allowed to say anything about it again and we will be good. And I'm still young, and I kind of just agree. I said I knew it wasn't false, but these are people that I loved, and I didn't want them to be mad at me. Even though I wasn't planning on seeing them anymore, I moved away, but like there was just something there that kind of made me feel compelled. I felt like a child, like a little child. And so I just agreed I wouldn't ever say anything. And as time's gone on, all these things I've had with people, and I'm always keeping other people's dirty secrets as if they're my dirty secrets. And they're things that they've done to me. I have a right to talk about these things if I want to. I don't have to protect them. I wasn't protected. No one protected me. So I don't see why I should shut up for them. And so part of why I really want to just tell all my stories is because I don't want to. I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor. And I feel that by keeping their secrets, I'm hanging on to a bit of victimization there because that's something they've told me to do. And they had no right to tell me to do that. I am friends with them on Facebook, not but the parents. And I wonder if they'll ever watch this video. If they do, then like, fuck you. I will speak about this. It was true. It did happen. And your son's a dirty freaking molester. And it was embarrassing as well at the time because he's younger than me. It's like, I let someone younger than me molest me. It still to this day, it fucks me up. It fucks me up. This video's meant to be about my mum. Everything is just so interlinked. There is so much more stuff. I don't know if I should go further or if I should leave it here. I don't know. There's like 2 big events within a massive traumatic period of my life. Growing up Jehovah's Witness was very traumatic. So, but since then, I will go back to my mum. So I think I'll like to end it on my mum. Other things happened in between, but I'm gonna skip over all that and go to like 2014. So in 2014, I had Mitzi. In 2015, I had Mitzi. So it would have been 2015, and I had Rue in 2013. And things kind of started coming up when I was pregnant with Rue. Just like niggling things. Like, I just asked myself, like, when I had Rue, I looked at her and I'd be like, I'd do anything to protect you. You, my little baby. You're so precious. And I'd think, Mum used to think stuff like that about me. When did it change? You know, when did she stop feeling that way of wanting to protect me and look after me? And I kind of started breaching subjects with her, but she'd really quickly change the subject. It wasn't until Mitzi was born and I had 2 of these little children. And I'll be like, how could you do that? How could you bring a paedophile into our home? You didn't put a lock on my door. You did nothing. The only thing that she did was buy condoms. And I'm like, now I'm older. I'm like, were they actually for me or for her? Because when she got back with my dad, she was already going through menopause or gone through menopause. I don't know when it finished for her, but I know she was definitely going through it. So now, with adult eyes, I'm like, did she buy those condoms thinking that maybe he will do something to Rihanna and at least she can prevent me from getting pregnant? Because this is all because the elders at the Jehovah's Witnesses told her she can't get divorced from my dad. So she took him back, knowing all this. And so I started questioning her quite heavily after I had Mitzi. I couldn't get it out of my head. It was in there all the time, thinking about the things she did, how she treated me. Because when she's not with my dad anymore, she's with another man. And she got divorced from him. But I think from the timeline, it would mean that she had moved to this town and this congregation didn't necessarily know all the ins and outs. So she could get divorced on the sly and then marry this new guy. H, we'll call him. So she got around that. But the reason why she divorced my dad really makes me sour. She came home one day and she said, oh, I'm not going to be going to visit your dad anymore. I'm like, oh, how come? And she said, because he thinks that just because she's in his bed, he has the right to do anything he wants to her. So she didn't like getting abused herself, but she was willing to let me get abused so she wouldn't be alone. the thing is, according to her doctrine, Jehovah's Witnesses, you cannot be raped by your husband. She was in the wrong. You are not, I repeat, you are not allowed to refuse your husband sex. So by her logic, her belief system, she was wrong. She was wrong. But when I started questioning her about all these things, she didn't want to talk about it at all. She started gaslighting me. When she'd see people in our family out in the street, she'd say, oh, I'm really worried about Rianne. And they'd call me up and say, she's saying all this stuff about you. And the thing is, we'd talk and I'd say, Mum, these things happen. She's like, yeah. She agreed the things happen. She just doesn't think that they're wrong because she was doing what she was told to do. So it's not wrong. It's her who's done it. It's different circumstances for her. If it was Honey Boo Boo's mum who did the exact same thing, Mum would be like, wicked woman. She would be so disgusted by it. If you put this story to her as if it was someone else, she'd be disgusted. But not because it's her, so it's different, you know. Man, she's so gross. She's so fucking gross. I was saying on Instagram the other day because someone had commented saying like they can't understand where my mum comes from. They weren't defending my mum, but any kind of defense of my mum in any kind of way or sympathy towards my mum kind of triggers me. And I put up a story on my Instagram just try and give a grasp of my mum's mindset. And like when I was like 7, something like that, I was playing in my paddling pool in my front garden in my knickers, and elders family came round, and the eldest son, who was like 18 at the time, so like 11 years older than me, they'd called me over to have a chat. And then I went back to the pool, and then he'd said to my mum that he was willing to wait for me because I was so beautiful to marry me when I was old enough, when I was 16, basically. And my mum always used to brag about that. That was like bragging rights. This eldest son wanted to marry me. He was willing to wait for a 7-year-old to grow up. And that's what I say, that is the mindset of my mum and Jehovah's Witnesses, because as a girl in Jehovah's Witnesses, you don't really have much value at all. The idea is you grow up, you pick a husband, and you have babies, and you worship God. That's it. You witness, you do the ministry, you do all that stuff. That is your goal in life as a female. You are pretty much worthless. Oh my God, I talked for half an hour and I'm still not done. I'll try and wrap it up. Anyway, where was I before that tangent? Yeah, so at one point I was discussing the beating my dad gave me. And I was like, you said this thing at this time, whatever. And she was like, that's not how I remember it now, Rianne. And I'm like, what do you mean how you remember it now? Your memory can't change. If it changes, that means it's not real. My memory has always been the same. And eventually she just full on just stopped talking to me. I had a phone call from my brother saying, you got to stop asking Mum questions. You're giving her a heart attack. She's in hospital. And she hadn't had a heart attack. And if there's something wrong with her heart, that's her own guilt playing on her, because she knows. She knows. I have no reason to stop asking her questions if she is not giving me answers. But she just left. We lived literally like 5 minutes walk from each other. If you come out my street, you can see her house, okay? Didn't live very far. My brothers moved away to different towns. Like, it was as soon as they could move out, they did. I was her loyal child. I was the one who called her every day, texted her every day. I was the one who has always been there with my mum and been her closest child in that sense. But I wasn't Jehovah's Witness anymore. So when I started asking her questions, and she's not allowed, for one, you're not allowed to hear bad things about Jehovah's Witnesses and how they enable pedophiles. But so she just cut all ties. Jared went around and talked to her at one point as well, and he could lead her down. You can lead her down the path. So this is how this happened. This is how that happened. And you agree with all this, and she'd be like, yeah. And when it comes to that, so you're wrong. No, I'm not wrong. That's how it was with that conversation he had with my mum. Oh, she's so twisted. But she just left. She left town. Not a word to me. I haven't spoken to her since. It's been like 5 years, I haven't spoken to my mum, and I won't, because Jehovah's Witnesses, once they shun you, they have to act and behave as if you're dead. They have to grieve for you as if you're dead. So as far as mum's concerned, I'm dead. I don't exist. So I won't ever see her again. She will go to her grave with these secrets, these unanswered questions that I have. She will go to her grave keeping them to keep her pride. She's this matriarch of the family that no one dares say anything to her. Even my brother, who's not a Jehovah's Witness, he refuses to take a side. And I've said, you don't have to disown her, but you should take a side. It's very clearly obvious who's wrong and who's right. But he's so scared to take a side or just disagree with her, because he knows deep down he's not a Jehovah's Witness. He can be shunned just like I am. He don't want to lose his mum. And I get it. But I've got no one. Like, I've lost my entire family. Even my aunt, who's not a Jehovah's Witness. Like, my mum got mentioned around her and she walked out my house. She walked out and she has not spoke to me since. And I don't know if she knows the full details of her and my mum. My mum, when I was growing up, used to always say, oh, you walk like your auntie. You write like your auntie. You talk like your auntie. And when I go around my nan's, I'd always ask to look at photos of them when they were kids. And I'd always ask, like, why is my auntie's eyes scratched out and her teeth scratched out? And mum would be like, oh, because I didn't like her growing up. And then it was only, I don't know, probably around the time I was pregnant with Rue, mum had this epiphany. She'd watched like Monk or something, some TV show, and there was some sisters on there. And one had been abused as a child by her father and one hadn't. And the one that hadn't always felt a little bit less loved than the other one, which is fucking twisted. And mum then said to me, that is what happened with her and my auntie. My auntie got abused and my mum didn't. And mum always took it as that their dad loved the auntie more than her. And all it was, from this TV show that they explained it, is that the dad would choose the child that wasn't likely to talk. And mum's like, oh yeah, I was so gobby. So yeah, I would have definitely said something. So he didn't love me less. He just knew I was going to talk about it. And it's like, you take comfort from that. You wanted to be abused. Is that why you were seemingly willing to let my dad abuse me? Maybe you think it's like a privilege. I don't know. What the fuck is wrong with you, woman? What is wrong with you? You know. Oh my god, my mum is so fucked. She's so fucked. Fuck you, mum, if you're watching this too. But yeah, she's never gonna answer my questions. And I have PTSD because of her. Like, I sleep on towels every night because in my sleep I sweat profusely. I can't have a quilt on me. I have to sleep with thin blankets. And yeah, I have to replace my new towels every day because I have PTSD. And when I sleep, like, I literally drip. I wake up in the night and I'm like, oh my god, because I'm suddenly like freezing. I'm freezing cold and like sweat is dripping off me. I'm sorry, TMI, but it is dripping off everything. I don't go to sleep in my pajamas or anything like that because I know this happens. And it's worse when you wake up and you got wet clothes all over you. So, I have a lot of things. I have to talk about my mental health at some point in more depth. But my mum has caused so much damage. And I wanted to make a video at least expressing some of my biggest grievances. If any of you guys have any questions about anything, please ask me, because it will help me, because I have a really hard time trying to figure out a way to make these videos, just because there's so much and so much intertwined with things. So ask me specific questions and I'll do my best to answer anything, because I have no secrets. I'm willing to tell everything. And I just don't know where to start. So if you have any questions on Jehovah's Witnesses, abuse, I'm sorry if I've triggered anyone. I'll put a content warning on the title of this. I meant to mention it earlier on in the video. Maybe I'll make a little recording at the beginning saying a content warning. But yeah. Ask me questions. And I will see you another time and talk about this some more. Because There's so much more. Bye.